This is an interesting field for us because clearly AT&T and I think most in the industry see cloud computing as part of the future. The opportunities are endless, and the challenges are equally endless. Most of our systems in place today have some degree of structure. For example, at AT&T, we have a 30-plus person team whose sole job is to look at accessibility in product development. In the first 3 months of existence, they had 10,000 queries. So the challenge then becomes when you come to cloud computing, which has an infinite number of possibilities, how do you structure that? How do you formalize it for a company? And how do you ensure what you're doing makes sense when there's so many variables out there? We know that there's some things that can help with cloud computing and there's some things that can hurt. Obviously, the power and the processing, the ability to develop things like we have Watson, which does text-to-speech and speech-to-text. You can offer that on mobile platforms. You can do it in a way that's transparent to people as long as they have adequate access to broadband. There's automated captioning. There's crowdsourcing. There's so many opportunities. But with these opportunities, you also come with a number of user interfaces, and it's kind of the wild, wild west of user interfaces. And when it comes to accessibility, there's no common plug. There's no common way at this point to necessarily provide that access. So if there's, by default, tools that are provided by the platform, folks like iOS, that embed a lot of accessibility, then you'll find more of it. If there are API or other types of ways that people can reach out and touch those points for the interface, that is helpful as well. But I think it's also a matter of how far do you go to restrict or to systemize the interface, and what challenges that to creativity. So it's a question that's still out there. Our folks want to have something to build to. They want to have clear definition. They want to make sure that what's happening makes sense from a business perspective, and frankly, we're not there. We know that with cloud computing, the user interface is one of the challenges. We heard earlier about the technology quotient. I think it's one of the solutions historically for people with disabilities is to provide assistive technologies, and with each of those technologies, you have a learning curve. So you learn that technology and you learn what it sits on it and how that thing it sits on, whether it's PowerPoint or Word or some other program. You have to relearn both systems and how they interact. So there's an incredible cognitive load. If you put that on that type of thing, and you work with other programs and other interfaces, and you're finding it in your house, and you're finding it in your job, and you're finding it in the way you interact socially, most of us are not as bright as Jamal. I certainly am not. And when folks are like that, average folks run into this challenge, it becomes incredibly difficult. And that we need to find a way that learning curve is shortened. We need to find a way to provide access that is simplified and discoverable, and not just for people who don't have disabilities, but for everyone. If we find a way of introducing information and making it more discoverable for everyone and for people with disabilities, it's kind of a win-win. But we need to have that way. We also need to have something for people to build to who want to provide access. Companies don't inherently want to exclude people. In some cases, they don't know what to do. In some cases, they don't know they have to do it. Sometimes the regulations help educate folks, and sometimes the requirements for purchasing by government agencies can also provide an education. But if there's no known solution or no endorsed approach, then it makes it very difficult to design to that. And we know that it has to be in the design phase that these things occur. I think there's a perception that there's little cost with accessibility, and that certainly is not true. What is true, though, is the cost of inaccessibility is so much greater to our society that in the balance we need to look at that. If we are creating a class of people who cannot be employed, who cannot engage in a civic means, people who cannot receive a full education, then we're building a situation that is a problem and a much greater cost for society as a whole. If we're excluding people who are older, people who have different functional limitations related to aging, we're excluding not only that population from working and participating, but from the guidance and knowledge that they have, especially people who are as old as I am. No, that part. But it's true. We are excluding, and we are looking at an aging population. We cannot afford that. So I think that some of the approaches that we have discussed today, looking at how we meet the needs of people who have cognitive disabilities and how we simplify interfaces and how we make learning more easier and more palatable and appealing and make things more discoverable, not just discoverable, but something that makes you want to investigate and learn more and develop more skills. I think as we understand that science better, we're better off. As we find some solutions that are more common that we can build to, we're going to be better off. As we work together on solutions and raise the general awareness, that will be helpful. But in the meantime, we need to make sure we're not throwing out the non-technical solutions. And a good example of that is with SharePoint. I, too, listen on the phone. And every time someone says, for those of you who are listening on the phone, I'm going to describe what's in this slide, I kind of think, well, that's nice because not all of us can see it. But we can't get rid of those supportive tools while the transition is going on, nor can we rely on substandard access as the solution. So I think that there needs to be more collaboration. We need to see government walking the talk. They need to actually purchase things that are accessible. They need to actually make demands. And we need, as industry, to meet the requirements that we have within the regulated bodies or whenever we can in terms of ADA access or access for employees, whatever parameters, we need to make sure we're also demanding that as well. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities. The processing is incredible. The challenges are also incredible, but not insurmountable. And some of the tools that we can provide now through the cloud can actually provide increased access to information, to participation, as long as we're mindful in what we're doing.